This is the third lesson of grid component training. And in this lesson, we're going to take the OE link list grid and we're going to add on a grid as a button. So let's get started. To add a grid as a button, we first need to define the grid. Now, we're already logged into database 10. We're already signed into project grid component training. So let's start a new grid. We're going to call this grid order inventory tricks button. Okay, we'll just, for simplicity, copy that to the description. Nothing to be done here. We need to select a table for data. So we're going to select the IM inventory tricks table. And the WV version. And we're just going to select everything from that table. Very simple. We need to define the filter. And the primary key to that table is source, order, control number, line number, level number, sequence number. And we're finished defining what we need for that grid. Now the inventory tricks table does link to distribution, so let's go ahead and define a grid as a button that also has a link list. So we'll do that exercise of linking tables again, and we're going to call this the distribution link view. Nothing to be done here. I'm actually going to use the IM.dist file, which actually is a valid table as a subledger both in Macola ES as well as progression. Macola ES actually maintains this table quite well. It's an easier table to look at, but it doesn't include an account description. So we're going to look at another table that we actually created called SY account file. This is a normalized table that gets you a description both for Macola ES and progression. We need to link the fields. We're just going to take the account description from this table and just take everything from this table. You can see we have an account description. Next we need a filter. The filter between the distribution table and the inventory tricks table is the ID number. And that's all you need to link those two tables. Now we need to go back to the inventory tricks button definition, and we need to link those two. So we're going to select the distribution link view to link to the tricks button. And again, all we need is the ID number, and they're linked. We'll just call this distributions. Now we actually have a button grid defined. I'm not going to go in and do further definition on its layout. We'll do that after we link them together. So I'm going to go back to the OE order lines by order. And we're going to go and add a button. And pick the button we just defined. And now we need to define the columns. The source, you can hard code these, and the source is an O for an order. So we're just going to hard code that. You do an @ and an O. The order number we're going to get right from the view. Control number we're not going to fill in, and by doing so we'll pick up all control numbers, which there really isn't any control numbers on an order line linkage. But we do need the line number. So we're going to pick that up off the list. We're not going to worry about the level number. We'll get all level number ranges, which varies with different kinds of formats of running order entry. And a sequence number of 1 would mean just that line, but if we don't give a sequence number and we had say a kit, we would then see all the transactions associated with that kit. So I'm not going to fill that one in either. By leaving them blank, the system will assume a range of data and select everything. So now we've defined the button. So now let's go back to the order sales grid and do a preview. And you'll see we have a button. Now the one thing I did not do is I didn't give the button a name. So I'm going to go back, and I'm going to go back to the this is back in the order lines by order. We're going to go back in again, and we're going to look at that button. And you'll see I didn't do 2 things, and I'm going to correct those things now. 1, I didn't give the button a name. That name is over here in a caption, and we're just going to call it Inventory Tricks. The other thing I didn't do is I didn't decide to make that a double-click event. By making a double-click event, every time I double-click in there, then only that button will be launched. I'm going to add more buttons later, and only one button could be a double-click. So let's go back to the order sales grid and do a preview again. And now we've actually taken a little more real estate. I'm going to make this grid a little bit bigger so we can see more information. And I'm going to save that. And you'll see that button's active. So I can just double click and we can drill into that. And now we never formatted this. So we're going to do that now. Now there's no distributions because this is, and we'll see that in a minute, but I'm going to mass format the header and then mass format the detail. And this is an allocation record, so it has no distributions. I believe that the information we have here looks pretty good on the header. And on the column chooser, I believe we have, this is a way to know if there's any fields that you would wish to expose. You might wish to bring back username, but I think this is pretty good. And we have the account description, which we'd want to put after these other fields. We don't have a defined text name for that, so I'm going to clean that up a little bit. We don't have any data in here, so let's clean this up as we go. Most of this data is going to be too large to fit the way it is now, so I'm just going to spread these out a little bit. Okay, we'll save that. One thing interesting about these grids is, I haven't shown this before, but as when you link these grids together, they're actually dynamically linked. And now that I have a button here, like the link list grid changes as I scroll, these scroll too. And I have a choice up here to pin or unpin this. If I unpin it, or pin it, I guess I should say, now it's not linked anymore. And it just, it's a standalone picture of that data. So we've added a button of our own, and we've double-clicked and linked it together. And now I'm going to come back and add a couple more buttons. There's a lot of underlying detail that's shipped with Agility to provide you with some predefined buttons and grids. So let's add one of those. Let's go back to the OE order sales grid. And normally when you look at like an order header like that, many times you'd like to look at everything associated with the order header, and we don't want you to have to look at order numbers and copy them over and put them back into Macola with like any view you need to be here. So I'm going to call this button order, and we're going to look that up. I happen to know that that happens to be in the order views. I also happen to know the type is a dialog. And we'll explain later how you know these names as you drill into some of the views that are in the system. You'll find out what they are. And I merely have to link this on type. It's order type. And then we need to pick the order number. And that links these views. So now let's preview that again. And now we have the button we've defined, and we have this new order button, which I did not define as a double click. But we can now drill into the order itself. This has both a dialog at the top, which we'll be talking about dialogues in much further lessons down the road. And we have all the order lines that are linked to that. And you'll see that we have all these other buttons that are already defined here. And this is one of the advantages of taking and building on your buttons and your grids. As you link them together, they become more and more robust. And just by linking one thing that you've already defined to another grid, all that work you've done in the background, as you continue to build in Agility, then you continue to build these projects, and you gain the advantage of reusing all that work that you've done in the past. So that's how we do buttons, and that's the end of this lesson. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video tutorial, and I encourage you to move on to the next video tutorial in this series.